It's now exactly 8 o'clock Eastern time, and I just have to ask Dan, what time is it in Australia and in Sydney right now?
It's midday.
Midday in
And so,
Sydney,
all of you in North America, I can tell you tomorrow is a great day.
but it's Sunday there. It's not
Yeah.
Saturday evening there. It is so. Welcome to the second session, the bonus session of the American Pilgrims on the Camino. This is our phenomenal second session of the third annual open house virtual session. It is such a pleasure to have you here. We had such an inspiring morning and afternoon. We had almost a dozen guests that were providing inspiration, and we're going to continue the inspiration here this evening. We are going all the way around the world to Sydney, Australia, where yesterday it was maybe 115 degrees in South Wales and Sydney there and so forth. And Dan, it is so good to see you. In the podcast that you do every single week, we don't get a chance to see you, but we get to see you here on this virtual open house. So welcome. And you're also going to be seen when you come to Texas. Have you ever been to Texas, Dan?
No, I haven't been to Texas, Tom. So it's so great to be with you. I'm so excited. I haven't been able to sleep. I've been so excited about today. No, I haven't been to Texas, and I keep asking friends here, and should I buy some cowboy boots?
Maybe, but I wouldn't walk a Camino in cowboy boots. I don't think that's a good idea. Uh, but you're going to be here. But you right now you're here on the virtual streaming YouTube channel for American Pilgrims and on Zoom, and you're going to share what you've been up to this past year. Has been somewhat of a challenge, Dan, and but also somewhat of a really good success. I think it's an inspirational story if you wish to share it with us.
Well, sure, Tom. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and it's so great to see all those many familiar faces, smiling faces of pilgrims from across America. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and all of my association and dealings with the American Pilgrims on the Camino has just always been full of love and life and kindness and just so fantastic. So, yes, getting to Texas next year is one of the bucket list items I can tick off, but also it's going to be a fabulous opportunity to meet you all again and to tell some stories and sing some songs. But this year hasn't always been that easy to do singing songs and telling stories. I lost my voice on, well, the last gig I did was Easter Sunday, April the 9th. And then I had been up to Brisbane to see my mom and got sat next to somebody on the plane home who coughed over me the whole way home. I did this show on the Sunday afternoon, and then on the Tuesday, I developed this dreadful, dreadful illness and lost my voice. But the silver lining was it made me appreciate the things in my life that are super important to me, and that's my family. And I was able to focus a bit on them and not have to sort of stretch myself too thin as I tend to do as a rule with my day job is very demanding. My second job as a musician is very demanding, and my third job as a podcaster is takes up a lot of time as well. So I was able to, Tom, take some time to spend with my family and not working every weekend, sometimes two, three shows a weekend, meant that I was able to just relax, which was the first time really. I've been a professional musician for 40 years. So the first time in 40 years that I haven't had a gig every weekend, at least every Friday, every Saturday, or definitely every Sunday. So I was able to focus on the most important thing, and that's my family. So in some respects, it was a blessing.
So, and how long did that last through? It's from April until just about recently, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I'll tell you the whole story if you like. What I, I I got this virus and I coughed and coughed and coughed and coughed and coughed and like this sort of violent coughing that would keep me awake all night. And it went on for days and days and days. I had 10 days off work, which is I've never had 10 days off before in my life. And then I started to feel better, even though I wasn't coughing nearly as much, but my voice just was broken. I cancelled a gig, the first time I had done in years. And well, I don't even remember the last time I cancelled a gig. And then I expected my voice to get better. And my wife and I actually went away for the weekend to see some friends down the south coast, a couple of hours drive away. And I took my guitar. And on the Saturday night, I said, I'll sing you a few songs, and picked out. And halfway through the first song, not even halfway through the second verse, I said, I'm sorry, I can't sing. So we came back to Sydney and went to see a specialist who said, oh, you have scarring on one of your vocal cords from coughing, from the coughing. You cough so hard. Your vocal cords are really only about as big as your thumbnail. So it was just on one side, and it was about 2.5 mil thick, maybe an eighth of an inch thick by about a quarter of an inch long. And he said, oh, I think we can inject steroids into that. We can go down there. Oh man, really? So as it turned out, luck would have it, a second specialist rang and said, you called and tried to get an appointment. We've got an appointment. If you'd like to come over, we thought we will get a second opinion. So the second doctor said, no, you don't need that operation. You don't need that procedure. And I said, oh, okay, fantastic. So we cancelled. Anyway, 2 weeks later, the voice got much, much worse, almost to a state where I couldn't talk at all. So we went back to that guy, and he said, yeah, I told you should have come and we said, okay. So we did the procedure, and as I'm leaving, he said, oh, Dan, before you go, look, I'm going to be honest with you. And I said, okay. And he said, you're never going to sing again. And I said, well, I didn't say anything. I wasn't allowed to talk. I was like, put it in my phone. You mean like this month or next month, or what do you mean? He said, no, if you were a marathon runner, I would be telling you won't run again. I said, okay. So I went out to the reception, and the receptionist, was paying the extraordinary bill. And she said, well, boy, that was a tough consult. And I thought to myself, yep, that was a tough consult. So I got in the car, but I do remember actually thinking to myself at the counter there and then, well, there are people getting worse diagnoses today than that. So look on the bright side. So then I'm driving home, I was thinking, and I remember thinking, who am I going to be now? That's going to be a big thing to go through. So I went back to the other doctor, and she had recommended to me a speech therapist named Cecilia. And the first thing I thought was, Cecilia is the patron saint of musicians. So I said, okay, I want to see Cecilia. So I went to see Cecilia, and she looked at the videos they had taken of the damage on my folds and said, I don't want to hear that. Let's not even take any notice of him, okay? And I said, oh, okay, if you think so. So she gave me these exercises to do. And so every single day I had to do, and every hour of every day I had to do some exercises. First of all, I couldn't speak for 3 weeks. So in the course of this whole thing, there was 2 lots of 72 hours when I couldn't speak, and 1 lot of 3 weeks where I couldn't speak at all. And we're going to talk about silence in a moment, Tom, but the process was every hour of every day when you were awake, you did these exercises, and then I would go back week after week, and Cecilia became not just a speech therapist, but a life therapist as well, because she was just so positive in everything she said and did. And after about 6 weeks, I started to get my voice back. After 8 weeks, I started to hear my old voice, which was kind of really unusual. And then after 12 weeks, I went to see Cecilia, and she said, I think you might be ready to sing again. And I was, what? She said, you're not going to sing next week, but I want you to go and see a singing teacher now. So she sent me to see a singing teacher named Patricia, who I guess would be in her sort of mid to late 70s. And she is just a genius. She said, okay, sitting at the piano, sing this note, sing this scale, sing this here. Okay, stop. Now go back down on the scale. Okay, stop. And she said, what we have here is a situation where I'm going to have to teach you to sing again from scratch because your old instrument is gone. So we need to find a new instrument, a new voice coming from this instrument. If it's like an acoustic guitar in a sense, strings, resonating body, and we're going to find a new way to sing. So I started lessons. I suppose 6 weeks later, she gave me an old song called The Vagabond by Ralph Vaughan Williams. I think it's like a 120-year-old song. Would you believe it's about walking along rivers and dipping your bread in the river and living the life of a vagabond. That's the life for me. And it rang true for me in a kind of really odd way. And then slowly but surely, I didn't know what she was doing, but slowly but surely I noticed that her right hand on the piano was going further and further up the keyboard every week. And then before I knew it, she said, bring me a song that you've always sung. Bring it to me. And I said, okay. So I took a song in that I've sung since I think I was about 10 years old. And she said, now, come on, stand here. Let's sing it. What key did you normally sing it in? And I sang it. She drew breaths. She told me, here, I want you to take a breath here, 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 here. Now sing it for me. And I sang it, and the voice was there. It was there. And since then, we've worked on breathing, intonation, different tones in different keys. And every time I go to see her, it's a different life journey, not just a voice journey. And the best part about it, everyone, is that she only just this last week, like last Wednesday, conceded when she said to me, when you came in, I thought, oh, we're in big trouble here. But she said it was your diligence, your dedication to getting your voice back that has got you to where you are today. So that was a great kind of reinforcement that putting in the effort
And
pays
this
off.
virus was not COVID? It was a different
Virus? No, it wasn't.
It wasn't.
No, there is a name for it, Tom. I can't remember. It's a RIV or ROV or something. Yeah, man, I was the sickest I've ever been in my entire life. Made COVID look like a sniffle, you know. Yeah.
Well, we're so happy
Do you want me to sing you the song that I sang?
Sure. Yeah.
Let me sing you that song.
Are you okay?
I've been singing this since I was a kid.
Are you okay to sing tonight?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Here, listen. This is it. Oh, my bags are packed, ready to go. Standing here outside your door. Hate to wake you up to say goodbye. But the dawn is breaking, it's early morn. The taxi's waiting, I'm blowing his horn. Already I'm so lonesome I could die. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you wait for me. Hold me like you've never done before. 'Cause I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go. There's so many times I let you down. So many times I played around. I tell you now that they don't mean a thing. Every place I go, I'll think of you. Every song I'll sing for you. When I come back, I'll bring your wedding ring. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you wait for me. Hold me like you've never done before. 'Cause I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go.
You got back, Dan. Now, did your wife sing that to you before she left on the Portuguese Camino?
My wife doesn't sing, Tom.
New singer.
She's the first one to tell you too. Yeah. No, Jenny doesn't sing. No, but she's just had the time of her life.
Was
She
that
went with three friends. They called themselves the Portugals. They
yeah?
had the
Was
time
that
of
tough
their
to say?
life.
Tough to do to say goodbye to her to go off and do her Camino without you going along?
No, because I wanted her to have the most incredible experience, and she did. And I don't think she would have had the same experience with me being there.
Yeah. But you
Yeah,
did a Camino with her and your family the previous year.
that's right. Last September, we walked from Villafranca del Bierzo to Santiago. Jennifer and I and the two boys, my two youngest sons. Yeah, yeah, that was magic as well. That was really a beautiful, beautiful thing to do. Yeah.
Duck and Lewis went with you. Duck and Lewis.
Lewis and Riley.
No,
Yeah,
Duck, right?
yeah, Duck. Yeah, Ducky. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought you said Jock. Yeah, no, Duck. Yeah, the little duck. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it was magic. It was magic. It's so great to do. We've been very lucky, and the Caminos have been very kind to me and to my family.
So when your wife went on the Camino, what was her take on the Camino? Was it different from when you went off by yourself to do it?
Different, and because Jen could not um, couldn't go without knowing where she was going to stay each night. That just would have caused her way too much stress and anxiety. So we made a point of booking everywhere we went before we went, and she did the same thing for the girls walking, the Portugals walking in Portugal back in September, and that's not such a bad thing. And I'll explain why. Because you can just relax, and it was very, very busy in September, particularly the last 3 or 4 days. It was really busy. But knowing that you had somewhere booked already, that's not how I do things traditionally. But I suspect when I go back, and certainly we're going back in May, we have already booked that accommodation already for most of it. So it's, as much as I'd love to be the freewheeling, free spirit pilgrim, that's not going to happen.
Now for me, you did have to book it because you're going with a group, and you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, I I have a new album all written, and it was due to be recorded in late 2021. And the executive who helped me put together Duende was working for Sony Music at the time, and there was a big explosion in Sony Music here. This chief executive was awful person and was marched out the door, and a lot of the executives who worked with him took the opportunity to take redundancies and get out, and Robert did that. My friend Robert Rigby did that, and he wrote to me and said, I'm looking for projects and I really enjoyed working with you. What have you got in the works? And I said, well, I've got an album written. Would you like to hear the songs? And I sent them to him, and he wrote back straight away and said, oh, we've got to make that record. We've got to make that record. And I said, well, it's called Storyteller. There are stories around the songs. Each of the songs is a story. He said, oh my God, we've got to. And he happened to be working at that time with a young female pop star here in Australia called Tones and I, who had a hit song called Dance Monkey and went to #1 around the world. It was the most downloaded song, I think, in 2021 or something. And the producer was a guy called Dan Frizzer. And they were having a bit of downtime in the studio. And Robert said to Dan, "Hey, you should hear this guy Dan Mullins' songs." Working with him on his new album, and he played the songs for Dan, and Dan Frizzers, the number one producer in Australia, said, "I want to make this record." And Robert said, "Really?" But Dan's like a 55, 57-year-old guy. Like, he goes, "I don't care. I want to make this record. This is going to be an amazing, amazing album." And so we started the process of putting everything together. COVID got in the way. Robert had left Sony, so it's left to the artist to fund it. So these days, artists don't get record company money to make records anymore. They have to fund it themselves. So we thought about doing a Kickstarter or a fundraiser. What do they call it? A crowdfunding thing. And, you know, you get a T-shirt or you get a message online. And one night, Jen, my wife, said to me, "Why don't you invite people to walk the Camino with you? Do shows along the way, and they could pay a fee to walk with you, and that money would pay for the album." And I said, "Well, that's a pretty good idea." Actually, that's a really good idea. So we started, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and where people are signing up every day. Somebody signed up just half an hour ago. We got the message. So, yeah, we're going to take maybe 50 people with us. I'm not booking accommodation. I'm not booking anything. All I'm doing is shows. We'll be playing in a 500-year-old winery. The castle courtyard underneath the stars one night. We're this close to getting approval to play in the church, Sobrero, and that night I'll sing only hymns. I won't sing any Beatles songs or anything like that. I'll sing just hymns, classic hymns. We're this close as well to being able to do something in the cathedral in Santiago. There'll be shows in Santiago. There'll be shows in Leon, in a little Irish bar in Leon, and then in Astorga, in a grimy music bar in the back streets of Astorga. So all along each night, not every night, but probably 9 of 12 nights, I'll do a show somewhere, and people will get to walk and talk and sing and dance and I'm calling it the magical musical Camino. It'll be fabulous. And all the proceeds will go to making the new record, which will be sometime next year. The great news is, and we've only just in sort of putting the crossing the T's and dotting the I's, is a Canadian documentary maker has contacted me and would like to make a documentary out of it for Netflix or the CBC. So he's coming along to shoot a movie about the journey as well. So it's going to be fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, it will be fantastic.
Yeah.
And
do you want me to sing you? Do you want me to sing you one of the songs from the record?
Well, the song about that you sing in your podcast, to come along. What is that?
That's a
different one.
No, that's a song. I can play you that. Yeah, sure.
Whatever works out best for you, Dan.
Yeah. No, I was going to sing you a song about when back in the good old days when I was on the number one radio show in Australia. I used to be sent out into the country all the time to meet people, to tell stories, and to visit little towns and little country towns and places. And I met so many people. It was just so wonderful. And I was in a town, I think the town was called Temora, and I was reading the local paper, and there was a piece in there, just a small column, that this gentleman had passed away on Thursday, and his wife passed away on the Sunday. And they had been married, the piece said they'd been married for 50-something years, and I thought, the very first thing that came into my head was, well, she only had one lonely Saturday night.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's just, yeah, okay. And then I sort of morphed it into this song, having lived
it's
next door to...
Playing us on a Saturday night.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Of course, it's Saturday night there. Yeah. So this is only one lonely Saturday night. They married in 47, age 22, had 7 children, and lost one at birth. Children of neighbors and neighborhood rivals, but saw a little something in each other's eyes. Their hands seemed to age at exact the same pace. Wedding rings got tighter and then became looser, just like their skin and their next of kin. But their hearts were mighty and their love was forever. He died on Friday, or she died on Sunday, like someone turned out a light. In many ways a blessing bestowed upon her, she had only one lonely Saturday night. He was a miner, and she loved to bake. They climb in frangipani, just loved the sun. Their weatherboard cladding covered the fibro, and after a few years, no one knew they were households. He died on Friday, or she died on Sunday, like someone turned out a light. Somehow a blessing was bestowed upon her. She had only one lonely Saturday night. His illness was a creeper out of the blue. She didn't tell him, but deep down she knew. Oh, she wished it were her to go first, and 36 hours was all that it took. He died on Friday, oh, and she died on Sunday, like someone turned out a light. And somehow a blessing bestowed upon her, she had only one lonely Saturday night. One lonely Saturday night. One lonely Saturday night. Lonely Saturday night.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And you played that on your podcast recently too.
Yeah. It's a really lovely song. It's a lovely song to sing.
You couldn't
It's a
do
nice
the
song to sing.
podcasts for months.
I didn't do the podcast for months. Yeah, that's right. It was I had to rethink sort of everything I did, Tom. You know, when you're not talking, particularly for those times when you weren't talking at all, I'm looking forward to speaking to Skye about this in a moment, but you get very insular. It's this internal conversation. I'm a communicator. That's what I do for a living, executive. I'm a media executive. I spend all day on the phone in meetings, in studios. When I get home, I spend all night on the phone. I conduct hour-long interviews, as you all know. Sometimes I'll do 2 or 3 or 4 of those in a day. So I'm always talking. So it completely changed my life. It made me really appreciate the gift of communication and, of course, singing as well. To lose that would have been, catastrophic. But fortunately, fingers crossed, everything's going well. I'll be back into playing gigs from next weekend. I'm doing a couple of shows between now and Christmas, which is lovely.
Okay. Speaking of gigs, do you want to tell everybody about? Well, you're going to be at the American Pilgrims in outside of San Antonio in Hunt, Texas, at Low Ranch, performing March the 7th through the 10th. And that's going to be really special.
That Saturday night show, I think, is going to be the highlight of my trip. I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be fantastic, and I'm looking forward to seeing everybody there. I'm going to be doing a show at Valparaiso between Chicago and South Bend, Indiana, on the Friday. Is the 16th, I think, Tom?
15th.
Friday, the 15th of March next year. I'm doing a 5 p.m. show and an 8 p.m. show. So if you're in Chicago or in South Bend and you want to come and see, it's a little Spanish restaurant called Don Quixote. It's fantastic. And that'll be a wonderful night. Your ticket will include the meal and the concert as well. And That'll be a very special show, or a couple of shows. I can't wait. That's going to be so exciting, and I'm hoping to do some other shows sort of tucked in around. If anybody's in Dallas, I'm in Dallas I think for 2 nights, and then I'm in San Antonio for 2 nights. That's the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday before the conference. I've never been to Dallas, never been to San Antonio. I don't know where I'm going to be, but we'll have a few days spare there. If anybody would like to suggest somewhere that I could play around that part of the world, that'd be great. I'd love to do a show there. Maybe even a house concert. Who knows?
There are a lot of pilgrims in Texas. Just saying, a lot of pilgrims in Texas. We've
Of
got
course.
here's in San Antonio and North Texas and Dallas and the Houston area, and they're great pilgrims. Great pilgrims.
Houston, Houston, Texas. Yeah, right.
Houston,
Yeah,
you're going to be in Texas.
I know, I know,
Not
I
just
know.
like
And
either,
I
and
beg your pardon. Sorry, Tom.
it's not like the Outback.
No.
You're Outback in Australia, right?
Oh,
What they call going out into the country is the Outback.
yeah, the Outback. Yeah,
The Outback, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
In fact, there's a chain of restaurants. They claim to be Australian. They call themselves the Outback Restaurants here in America.
Oh, what are they serving?
Yeah, but they claim to do Australian food. So I don't know,
Oh,
maybe a little kangaroo. Anyway, so so we should welcome our next guest briefly, and then we'll come back to just you, Dan, solo after this special appearance, so that you can maybe share with us a few more songs and a few more things of what you've been up to with your podcasts and so forth,
fabulous.
because your podcasts have been truly inspirational. Before you got this problem, and now since you've been in recovery. Um, Somehow that doesn't sound right that you've been in recovery, but your wellness and ability to be able to talk. So, if Joe, you could spotlight Skye coming up here. And oh, Skye,
Hi.
Skye, wait, Skye, don't say a word, okay? So, yeah. So Dan, I want you to envision this. Well, Skye had hair when she did the pilgrimage in the Camino last summer. So I see this lady from California, and she had this beautiful smile, and she did not say a word. And Skye, if you could show us your hand signs and facial expressions that you did to get through to get help in Grignon of all places from me. Did you get that, Dan?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, right on. Walking in silence. Okay.
And she had this beautiful smile. And that was in Grignon, and what a special evening we had there. And then she did not say a word during her entire Camino. And she'll tell you about that because, Dan, you're the master interviewer. So I thought I would let you talk with Skye, especially since at about the same time there in May and June, part of July, you were both silent. You were becoming listeners, paying attention to everybody else and not speaking. And yours, Dan, was the result of an illness. Skye did this willingly to experience that as part of her Camino of walking as a silent pilgrim. So I'll let the two of you just talk about that experience and that pilgrimage. Skye and Dan.
Thanks, Tom. Look, it's a real pleasure to meet you, Skye, and I'm really fascinated by the concept, firstly, of what you did, walking in silence. But let me ask you to take a step back. How did the Camino come into your life? How did you first find out about it? And then the next question will be, why did you walk in silence? But first, tell us how it came into your life.
Well, last year I decided to even start hiking and camping in the first place by embarking on the Pacific Crest Trail. For those who don't know, that's a trail in the United States, and it goes from Mexico to Canada. So it's about 5,000 kilometers. I was able to do about half of that until I injured myself. I had to get off trail. And through that experience, I met two park rangers that had previously done the Camino, and they hired me to do some work on the PCT with them. And when I was looking for another journey to do this year, they were like, oh, well, the Camino sounds like it would be perfect. And we loved when we did it. So maybe you should consider it as well.
Right on. And then where did the idea come from to walk in silence?
That's interesting because I had never heard of anyone doing something like this in silence. Um, Truthfully, I grew up in a Catholic church and I went to Catholic school. And when I went and visited this Catholic church a few months before I went on the pilgrimage, I actually was kind of overwhelmed with nostalgia, with my childhood, with going to church there, and maybe not considering myself religious, but more spiritual now. And I went and I sat down in the church, and I was just sitting there. I was kind of overcome with emotion, crying a little bit. And I don't know what it was, but in my head, I heard something say, do the Camino in silence. And that was it. I can't explain it to you. I hadn't read about anyone doing the Camino in silence before, or I've never done any sort of vipassana or other silent meditations prior to this. But I decided, why not?
Well, I guess the next question is, was it easy or was it difficult?
Well, I have been pretty talkative for about 26 years of my life up until that point. So I wasn't really sure how I would handle it, and I didn't try to practice beforehand. So I kind of went in cold turkey. And I definitely had a few slip ups. I'm not gonna lie, and I also did find that I do have the urge to talk to myself as well, like occasionally just saying things like, "Okay, here we go," and I had to make sure to cut all of that out. And I think actually one of the hardest parts was not singing. You have a beautiful voice. I really enjoyed listening to
Oh,
you sing that last song,
thank you,
and
Skye.
I I love singing when I'm actually hiking. And so one of the hardest things I had to do was keep myself from singing while I was going along the trail.
That would be very difficult for me too, because I just find the rhythm of walking is that metronomic sense that it becomes rhythm, and it's almost like a snare drummer is walking beside you, keeping time, and you sort of feel like you have to sing. But in my case, I was telling everybody earlier, the gathering earlier, that I had 2 periods of not speaking. Wasn't a choice in my case. 2 lots of 72 hours and 1 lot of 3 weeks. And what I found most difficult actually was silencing my inner voice as well, because so much of our processing of everything that's going on around us is vocalizing, is talking about it. Gee, it's hot today. What time are we leaving for that thing tomorrow afternoon? Who's home for dinner? It's just conversation becomes part of communication, and when you can't do that, I found myself constantly in dialogue with myself, and quite often that was very difficult to quieten that internal dialogue. Now, if you were doing that for weeks on end, it must have at times been very difficult.
I would say I didn't necessarily try or go into this with the intention of quieting my inner dialogue. Sometimes it was quiet, and I was really just focusing on every step that I would take, looking at the nature around me, looking at the people around me. But something I found in practice, especially when I had started hiking last year, was kind of observing where my mind would go. And it was interesting to find that, especially in very difficult or more strenuous parts, or when I was tired, I would actually find that my thoughts would become more difficult. And the process of letting go the emotions if I didn't want to engage with that, and just seeing that that's where my mind went was really interesting. That's like my physical body was undergoing duress, and then my mind would start to reflect that, and I was like, that's interesting. Why would my mind do this to me while I'm already physically not at my best right now? So it was an interesting practice to watch my mind do that and be more of an observer and take a backseat to that, and then try to decide when I wanted to interact and process what those maybe negative thoughts were, or be able to let them pass and be like, this isn't necessary right now. I have enough to focus on with my 2 feet in this hot desert in Spain.
Yeah, that's right. James has just part of the chat asked how did we let people know that we weren't speaking. For me, James, it was I had it as a in my photos on my phone, so I would just quickly open it up and show the on my phone. I have a voice issue; I can't speak, and it actually at times it was a blessing. I remember at the time my wife and I were looking for to buy a house, thinking of moving, and we went up to have a look at some houses. You know, the real estate agents want to talk to you all the time. So I would just say, "Sorry, I can't talk," and that was it. It was fine. I could just wander around the house. Didn't have to talk to anybody. It was a blessing. What about you, Skye?
So for the
This one?
majority of the trail, oh yeah, I would say like I walk in silence. And then some people would immediately, especially if they spoke sign language, get really excited and start signing to me because they thought that meant I was mute, deaf, some in between. And I would be like, no, 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 just for the trail. And they would understand. Um, and then because I didn't really want to draw attention to myself, like that wasn't the point of me being silent. But when I got to the main part of the trail where all three trails intersected, and I knew I would be dealing with a lot more people coming in and not understanding what was going on, it was easier for me to put a sign on my backpack that said, you know, Peregrina Silencioso, Pero, um, hablo conmigo. Like I would say that people could still talk to me or interact with me. At one point, I was given a pin that said "I am in silence," which was really just by chance by this wonderful young woman, and she had just come from a Vipassana retreat. But I did lose that pin, unfortunately, in one albergue. But yeah, so it's kind of a variety of ways I would communicate or not communicate to people that I was in silence.
One of the great things I love most about the Camino, Sky, and I'm certain that most of the 80 other people on the call will agree, is those long Spanish afternoons sitting on a plastic chair in the street, you know, in a cafe or maybe in a garden under an umbrella with a cafe con leche or even a cold beer at the end of the day, and everybody telling stories and talking about where they're from, and you're meeting new people from all over. Were you able to experience much of that, given that you weren't able to sort of chat back with people, or did you kind of find yourself alienated in a way?
I actually found almost the exact opposite when it came to I when I took on this vow of silence, it wasn't a vow of not communicating. So I really engaged with, I think they say that, and I could be totally wrong, like 30% of communication is verbal. So I really used anything else I could around me to communicate with other pilgrims. I did allow myself to write for the first 2 weeks if I really needed to or tried to communicate with people. However, for the last 2 weeks, I didn't do that. And for the most part, I did some form of charades, I guess you could say. And I found people to be much more engaged and much more present because they would have to pay attention to my hands, my facial expression, my body language, the context of the situation. And so if people chose to engage with me, it was so much more present than the average verbal conversation that you had. And the work that people would put in to engage with me was really beautiful. And I made some very special connections and even hiked with some of the same people along the way. And we would develop a communication system that became very kind of repetitive. So people would understand me more because they got used to how I was trying to do charades with them, I guess.
Yeah. And did it
Yeah.
make you a better? Did walking in silence make you a better listener?
Um, I would say so. And it was not having the expectation to verbalize or even have an answer ready in my head, because a lot of times when we talk to each other, we're already ready halfway through what that person said to add on to the conversation or say something else, and we're just waiting for that polite pause to add something. But because I couldn't verbalize any sort of response in that immediate after what they had just said, I could really sit with what they said and just take it in, before trying to continue on the conversation, or if that was the end of our communication at that point in time.
And then, so Skye, take us to Santiago de Compostela. Did you walk into the square and say, "Hi, everybody, I'm here. Fantastic. How good is it?" And they're all going, "My God, what the heck, Skye?" Or did you go to mass and finish it there? Or did you just sort of duck out the back without talking to anybody? Tell us about arriving in Santiago de Compostela.
Arriving there was beautiful. However, I decided to take on my vow to Finisterre.
Ah, okay.
So, although I did have the chance to meet with the sister, I'm forgetting her name, who does the processing groups afterwards. I think she was on in the earlier session. And I did write in my notebook to communicate with the other person that was in the room with us. But I told them that I was continuing my vow to Finisterre. And as soon as I made it to Finisterre, I sat at the very edge past the lighthouse and I was looking out at the ocean. I came up with kind of this ritual of when I started my vow of silence, I took a sip of water I had received at Lourdes because I
Oh,
stopped at Lourdes on the way. And then,
wow.
so when I was said I was going to be taking my voice back on and I'd finished my vow, I took a sip of the Lourdes water and then I walked back up and I saw a group of people that had been really close behind me hiking, and they were all drinking beers at the cafe right there. And I was like, "Buen Camino, you guys!" And they were like, "Oh my gosh!" And they were all freaking out.
That's great. Hey, I started my second Camino in Lourdes. Walked a thousand
Oh,
kilometers from Lourdes to Santiago. I walked up to Saint Jean and then did the Frances, the full Frances. But that section between Lyon and I'm sorry, Lourdes and Saint Jean Pied de Port is particularly beautiful. You're walking most days in what looks like the set of Lord of the Rings. It's just kind of like it's next level, you're the only person there. There's nobody. There are very, very few pilgrims, and a lot of the albergues are just run by the local, or they're not albergues, they're gîtes, are run by
mm.
local councils, and they have a bit of a food vending machine. There's nobody there to stamp your pass, your credential, or anything like that. But you managed to fill it between the pages, as it were. Why Lourdes? You mentioned that you were Catholic, and you would have known, being brought up, about the legend of Lourdes and Mary and that journey. You carried that bottle of water, walked in silence, a vow, taking a vow. You keep calling it a vow. This Catholicism seems to be hanging around here, Skye.
It
Are you
is.
more Catholic now than when you were on the Camino as a result of making links to those Catholic icons, Lourdes, and walking in silence, making vows, things like that?
Catholicism is still a very strong part of my family back at home in the U.S. And when I went to Lourdes, a big part of that, I came up with this idea of getting rosaries from there and holy water as well. And then as I went to almost every church that I could throughout my journey, I would ask in silence if a priest or another religious member could actually bless them. And that was a present for my family at the end of my trip.
Wow.
But going back to how it personally impacted me, I would say I'm definitely more spiritual. I really felt connected to this earth, to everyone around me, to everyone on the Camino, with the intention of being self reflective and wanting to add something more to their life. I don't necessarily know that it would tie just to one religion, but it's definitely brought me closer to just the overall energy and presence that we all bring to this world that's really beautiful, and maybe something beyond that.
What did you learn about yourself in the course of this whole process then?
That I could actually not talk for a while was pretty impressive. Because I'm kind of talkative. Um, but that I really desire to connect with people, and that I feel like I really want to give back, and as much as I can, while still challenging and progressing myself and how I interact with this world. And so one of those challenges was not talking, and that I'm definitely not planning on stopping this path that I'm on now that it's the Camino. I feel like once you started the Camino, you're always on a walk of sorts.
Yeah,
And so that's how I
great
feel
line.
about, and
Great
that's how
line.
I kind of, thank you. I totally planned that. And yeah, I just feel like it will always be part of me, and I'll walk through life differently now because of it. And even being here in New Zealand, I'm actually not too far away from you. I was all the way up in a very remote location where we were hiking near where they filmed Lord of the Rings, and someone on their house had the Camino shell and the little
Wow.
arrow. I just saw that yesterday, and I was like,
That's great. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Yeah, yeah. And I just wonder one last question, Skye. Would you recommend doing it? Would you recommend a silent Camino? Is it for everyone, do you think?
mm, I think that taking a vow of silence is a personal challenge, and that I would recommend if someone wanted to do it even for a day. I think that that would be, I would recommend that to everyone just to see what it's like. Anything past that is going to be a personal challenge. And I think that it's important not to just say that I'm taking a vow of silence just to see that I'm not, that I, if I can go about not talking. But when you find intention and motivation to do that, that's where you will find that you can create real personal change with whatever that intention is that you're going into this vow of silence. So I
Fantastic.
would recommend it, yes, if you would like to challenge yourself, but
Yeah,
definitely have some intention behind that.
yeah. Oh, that's
Dan,
fantastic.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
jump in
Tom.
for a quick
Yeah, Tom.
second here.
Do you want to tell that story about Gragnon? Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Very quickly, Skye, you want to tell the story about your letter in Grignon?
Oh, yes, that was beautiful. So I came across Tom and Grignon, and I'll try to keep it short, but essentially, I was just trying to take a nap because I planned to hike through the night that night because it was hot during the day, which was already confusing for a lot of people. And when Tom came to meet me, that's when he found out I was in this vow of silence and was wanted to convince me to stay for a very special evening program that they put on there. And so, of course, I was interested, and I was like, I know I need to, keep moving on my journey, but I definitely want to participate. And he mentioned that when we have this program, that all of the pilgrims will hold a candle. And when they hold that candle, they hold space at that moment in time, to speak about what the Camino means to them, why they're embarking on this journey. And so he offered if I would like to write down what it meant to me to be doing the Camino, that he would like to share whatever my feelings were about, what the journey I was doing and how I was doing it. So when we got up to that special place, and just to paint a picture, it's in, beautiful church. They very specifically just light up the golden altar so it's sparkling, and we're sitting up in this choir loft, and it's dark, and we had this wonderful French woman. She started off opening up the program by singing, I believe it was Imagine by John Lennon. And after that, the candle started slowly making its way. And it was very emotional, as everyone was saying their reasons for doing the Camino. And then when it got to me, Tom started speaking, which I think threw some people off guard. And he spoke very, very eloquently. He expressed my message of love to everyone. And I think the gist of the letter really was that because I cannot speak, I hope that everyone here on their Camino laughs harder and connects even more in depth with each other and says Buen Camino as much as they can, and that I couldn't wait to say Buen Camino at the end of my journey as well.
Oh, wow.
And
How
so everybody
fantastic.
then was in tears, and everybody hugged each other, and we all sang Kumbaya, Dan.
Oh, fantastic.
So a great moment. Dan, would you, you were talking about Lourdes. You were talking about Kumbaya. Is there another song that you would like to share with us here this evening?
Oh, sure, sure, sure.
Sure.
I love that. I love that you were singing Kumbaya and Grenion. What the would have been amazing. Um, I can sing you a song I wrote on the Meseta, walking. And if you, I don't know if you can see the. So this is the guitar I carried on my back from Lourdes to Santiago in 2017, and the idea was to get, instead of getting the stamps in my credential, I would get them on the guitar. But they've all faded away now. You can't really see this. You can see I don't take very good care of my guitar, but it's kind of, well, it's a part, as much a part of me as my voice is, to be honest. And it was kind of silent for 6 months as well. This little guitar. So, but I wrote a song in on the Meseta, and I wrote it on the back of a napkin when I arrived in Hontanas. I've recorded it. I'm going to re-record it. Actually, I'm going to do a version next year for this documentary we're doing when we walk in May, and might even put it on the new album as well, a different version with some fiddle and piano accordions and stuff. But I've played this. I've been invited 3 times to play this at the Prime Minister's house in Sydney. I've played it on television. I've played it in America, in Spain, in the United Kingdom, and it's called Somewhere Along the Way. I should have this up, shouldn't I? El Camino roses, Santo Domingo crows. Believe you can, you're halfway there. 7 bells to 4. Frighten off the horses and also the waves. A lion's heart, an opening heart, and a soul as old as Slade. Somewhere along the way, somewhere along the way, I hope you find what you're looking for. Somewhere along the way, cellos on a soundboard beneath a field of stars. La Familia growing, crossing fields afar. Will you walk beside me? Will you lead the way? Your footsteps by the fountain, oh, they carry me away. Somewhere along the way, somewhere along the way, I hope you find what you're looking for. Somewhere along the way. How can I ever forget the Spanish sunrise, the Spanish sunset? El Peregrino Cantante, fullness of the moon, pressed beneath the arches, oh, and sunflowers in bloom. Words on parchment paper, fill an empty room. I hope this blessing, such as it is, finds you in full bloom. Somewhere along the way, somewhere along the way, I hope you find what you're looking for. Somewhere along the way, one more time. Somewhere along the way, buen camino. Somewhere along the way, I hope you find what you're looking for. Yeah. Somewhere along the way. Can I hear you, Tom? Can you hear me? What have I done? I can't hear you, Tom. What have I done?
You gotta unmute Tom.
There we go. Yeah, no, I know.
Got you now.
What an undo. So that was awesome. That's awesome. And that's just a sample of what you're going to hear at the March gathering. So we should be moving along. Is that correct, Joe?
I think so. You're the host, sir.
Okay, if I'm the host, then let me ask the guest if he has just an encore. You know, when there's a special person up on stage, the crowd asks for one song encore. Do you feel comfortable doing that, Dan? Or?
Of course, I'd love to. Well, because I got some lovely messages. Can I just say I can see Carl is here and Colleen and David. There's lots of people here, and Stacy and Sarah and everyone. Just seeing familiar faces and familiar names just is such a lovely thing, Tom, you know. This is such a wonderful community of really lovely people, and we're all blessed to be a part of it, aren't we? Just scrolling through to see some of the familiar names, people who've come to see me. Carl, in fact, drove all the way from Pennsylvania to Canada to see me play. And Brian, I don't know if Brian's on the call. I can't see Brian's name, but Brian Danker in California has driven me all the way halfway across America. So I can't wait to see you all in March. I'm going to sing you another John Denver song from when I was a boy. And I don't know why I feel like John Denver today, but... And the other message, I just wanted to finish, Tom, by saying if anybody's interested in walking with me in May, or you would like to invite me somehow, I'm only in America for about 2.5 weeks in March, but I am going to be around Dallas and San Antonio and for that first week. And then the conference, I'm of course there for 3 or 4 nights. And then after that, I'm heading up to Chicago, Milwaukee, kind of around that South Bend area. So, and if you can come to see us in Valparaiso with me and Tom, we'll be there. We'll be there at the restaurant Don Quixote for a fabulous night. So that's if you can come up to see us on that's the Friday after the conference. That'd be fantastic as well.
And Sarah was asking which guitar you're going to bring to Texas.
I'll be bringing this one. Yeah, I'll be bringing this one. I couldn't leave it behind, but actually, with the light on it right there, you can see the split in the soundboard now. Yeah, that's not good. But this one will be with me, and yeah, that's going to be a really special show on the Saturday night. It really will. And I haven't spoken to the organizers, Tom, yet, but I was thinking maybe on the Friday afternoon or even on the Sunday morning or something, I might even do some podcast interviews live. For my podcast, which would be a really nice thing to be able to do, but we'll see how that all works out. Yeah. So, almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River, Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, blowing like a breeze. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads, all my memories gather round her. Older lady, stranger to blue water, dark and dusty, painted on the sky, misty mountain moonshine, teardrops in my eyes. Country road, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country road. In the early morning, springtime, she calls me. Radio reminds me of my home far away. As I'm leaving town, I get the feeling I should have been home yesterday. Yesterday. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. The Camino, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home, take me home. Country roads.
Oh, that was beautiful. Dan, thank you so much. I've got one last question for you.
Go ahead, Tom.
What is your most powerful takeaway from the Camino as a pilgrim?
Love.
Love.
Yeah. Well, because I think of myself as a Christian. I'm a Catholic, born and bred. And you go, forget about the church. It's easy to say forget about the church, but if we just put aside the church for a moment and put aside all of the hardship and trauma and hurt that's been caused by the church, and focus on what the teachings of Jesus were, and the reason that St. James himself, a humble fisherman, decided to walk alongside Jesus Christ was that message of love. And I see pilgrims who wouldn't normally be holding the feet of other pilgrims, helping them with their blisters. I see pilgrims carrying packs. Not everybody's like that, but by and large, I think when you get out on the Camino, you get a sense of what the best of people can be, and that really is walking and sharing and caring for each other with a sense of love. And with love comes respect. With love comes compassion. With love comes generosity and generosity of kind and generosity of spirit. And so, yeah, it's love, and that's what I talk about, having the opportunity to be part of your community gathering today, Tom. I say yes to everything because you finish this call and I'll just feel the love of everybody around the world. How can you not just love that? How can you not? I'm so excited to be coming to Texas to be with those people. I was in the Blue Mountains an hour and a half outside of Sydney 2 weeks ago, and I parked my car down the street. I was making my way to the gathering. There was about 50 people coming for the night, and as I was walking up, I could hear laughter, and it was pilgrims. I could hear them laughing, and I knew straight away that wasn't the bar next door that was I could tell straight away that was pilgrims laughing, because they have a sense of togetherness and a sense of a sense of understanding, of patience, and of love. So that's the
Love.
one thing I take away. And if I could love a little more every moment of every day, then that would be a better life for me and for everybody else. Love.
I think we all share that, Dan. And thank you for sharing with us. And it's so good to see that you're back at it. You've got your voice, you've got your podcast, you've got your singing. You're going to be doing a special Camino and special concerts and visits. And there's a lot of love there. And
thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much for being Dan and being our Australian pilgrim friend. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your kindness. So great. So great.
We're not finishing this Zoom yet. This because we're going to have Joe Curro. Joe, who is the gentleman with the headphones on. He is the incoming chairman of the American Pilgrims on the Camino. His term starts on January 1st, and he's going to talk about the future, 2024, 2025 of the American Pilgrims. Joe, take it away.
Well, thank you, Tom. And before we let you go, Dan, I just wanted to thank you very much, too. I was so looking forward. I mean, it's so great to talk to you and see you again. Enjoyed the few conversations we've had. Really wanted to meet you in person back in 2020, but the pandemic was rolling in. I was one of those guys who got cold feet. So I look forward to seeing you in Texas. And thank you. Although I'm going to curse Tom for putting me on after you and after Skye, because you're tough acts to follow. So,
but Dan, Joe plays a really mean harmonica.
Oh, fantastic!
That's one word for it.
And he's a really great singer too.
Oh, awesome!
It's several things for the American Pilgrims.
So thank you so much, Dan, and we'll see you in Texas.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone. See you again. Thanks, Tom.
And when can we? Okay.
And thank you, Tom. Yeah. What's that?
Spotlight yourself, Joe.
Okay, I will. But first, I have to thank you. I mean, what a great day we've had. I mean, you've been such an enthusiastic and joyful guide on this journey, as you always are.
Can't help but doing it with these great guests.
For everybody who's tuned in, these open houses have been Tom's brainchild, and he puts his heart and soul into them, and they just keep getting better and better every year. And I was going to ask everybody to give Tom Lebezinski a big virtual round of applause, but I know that Tom likes hugs. So I want everybody to give Tom a big virtual hug right now. A hug for the saint and a hug for Tom. All right. Thank you so much, Tom.
Muchas gracias.
For this. So let me switch this. My tech tonight too. So, for those of you who have not yet done the Camino, I mean, we hope that today has provided you with some excitement or insight as you prepare for pilgrimage. And for those of you who are Camino veterans, I have a question. Do you remember that feeling you had when you did your first Camino, or your second, or your 50th, like Johnny Walker Santiago? Fleeting encounters with hundreds of people and a deeper connection with others who share their stories with you. We hope that today, we were able to spark some of those same feelings. I mean, because today we really did have hundreds of people joining us via Zoom and YouTube, and we got to hear all the wonderful stories and insights from our fabulous guest speakers. And I want to just say a big thank you to all of them. So this morning, our chair, Steve Litch, talked about the 3 parts of our mission: to gather pilgrims together and create community, to provide information and encouragement, and to support the Camino infrastructure. So today's open house is a demonstration in action of the first part of that mission, gathering pilgrims together. So we're a pilgrim family, and I hope you felt that. You also got to hear a bit about how we do this in other ways when Dave Donsler discussed our annual gathering of pilgrims coming up in March in Texas, and our plans for an international gathering in Vancouver next year. And lastly, Steve alluded to the way that you can continue to gather with other pilgrims in person through our chapters throughout the year. Today, we also tried to serve a second part of our mission, to inform and encourage you. So today's speakers have such a breadth of knowledge and wisdom, and we're so blessed that they've shared this with us in person virtually. I mean, how many of us in our preparations for our first Camino poured over our Brierley guides or the CSJ guides that Johnny Walker Santiago wrote? How many of us listened to hours of Dan Mullins and Lee Brennan's podcasts? I know that I did. How many of us watched the Rick Steves episodes on the Camino over and over? And those of us who've attended annual gatherings always learn something new from the indefatigable Professor George Grenier. The last part of our mission is to support the Camino infrastructure, including trail markers, albergues, and the Camino's tradition of hospitality. And this can only succeed with you. Our ability to fund grants and other major projects relies upon your memberships and donations. As an organization, we're completely volunteer run, and I'd like to encourage you to contact your local chapter coordinators and see how you might help, or check out other volunteer opportunities on our website, americanpilgrims.org. You know, in addition to volunteering with American Pilgrims, our members are highly valued as hospitaleros with the Ribadismo Welcome Service and as volunteers with the Pilgrims Office and nonprofit organizations. We heard today from Faith Walter of Pilgrim House and Sister Catherine of Camino Companions, who I hope gave you a sense of just what Camino support and service look like. They're models for the tradition of service that we encourage at American Pilgrims. So I'm currently reading this book by Nancy Louise Fry called Pilgrim Stories On and Off the Road to Santiago. Yeah, it's blurring out, but. So the book was published in 1998, the year that American Pilgrims on the Camino was founded. And it portrays a very different time for the pilgrimage. Before there were 6-digit numbers of pilgrims arriving in Santiago, and when the limited creature comforts of the pilgrim are listed as including phone booths. So I was struck by this passage. In the summer of 1994, 137 hospitaleros volunteered in 20 refuges. 93 were Spanish and 44 were non-Spanish, 14 English, 6 Swiss, 10 Italians, 5 Germans, 4 Belgians, 2 Americans, 2 Dutch, and 1 French. By 1997, the number of hospitaleros had risen to 230, with roughly the same breakdown by nationality. That's for the whole Camino, folks. Now, to put this in perspective, since American Pilgrims on the Camino began offering our members hospitalero training in 2004, we have trained over 750 hospitaleros, and many of our members have served multiple times. And this is just one of the ways that we give back to the Camino. So I want to pull back a bit from our mission of gathering, informing, and supporting, and discuss our vision as an organization. We inspire all who seek the spirit of the Camino to connect with the global community of pilgrims. Let's unpack this, as the pundits say. I hate that term, but let's dissect that a bit. So we inspire. Inspiration is so important. It's that spark that gets us to take the first step out the door and pulls us forward until we find ourselves at the cathedral in Santiago and before the tomb of St. James. So many of us know that feeling of inspiration that we felt when we first saw the way. Speaking of which, I hope you caught today's discussion with Martin Sheen and Rick Steves. It'll be on our YouTube channel as part of today's event, but after the conversation, Rick let us know that a longer discussion he had with Martin Sheen and Emilio Estevez is available free of charge on his website, and Sarah's going to post the link in the chat. I think she did just now. We inspire all. Our doors are wide open. We invited any and all to join in today's open house, whether they're American Pilgrims members or not. Our chapters operate on the same basis. It's consistent with the idea of Camino hospitality. Bienvenidos, welcome. We inspire all who seek the spirit of the Camino. So often we break the Camino and our preparation for pilgrimage down into logistical planning and finding the right gear and making sure we have the right technology. It's what Dan calls being a spreadsheet pilgrim. And American Pilgrims is here to help you with that for sure. But we also take great care to remember that for many of us, there's a deeper spiritual motivation connected with the Camino. I mean, Skye shared her beautiful story today. It was so inspirational. And I also had the opportunity to read some of her poems, which are also incredibly inspirational. You'll find examples from other people in the pages of our magazine, La Concha, and in our regularly scheduled national Zoom talks and gathering lineups, which have featured mendicant pilgrims and individuals who are motivated by deep religious faith, as well as those who practice more personal forms of spirituality. We perform shell ceremonies for first-time pilgrims, both at the chapter level and at the annual gathering. And we remember those who have departed this life for their final pilgrimage. For the last few years, a highlight of the gathering has been a silent morning walk, accompanied by a lone bagpiper, to a replica Cruz de Ferro, which is crafted by our board colleague, Tom Coleman, who's a very talented fifth-generation blacksmith. As participating pilgrims lay their stones at the foot of the cruz, there's hardly a dry eye to be seen, and we're all transported back to Monte Arado. Last year, at a moment of heightened solemnity, we were graced by a bald eagle that swept down over Lake Tahoe and assembled peregrinos. And if that's not the Camino spirit, I don't know what is. We inspire all who seek the spirit of the Camino to connect. So one of my great joys when walking the Camino is the multi-generational aspect of the experience. One day I might be walking with someone who's old enough to be my father, and the next day might be spent with young people my kids' ages. And I have to admit, on my last Camino, I got to sending my daughters pictures and WhatsApp messages along the lines of, hey, I met this nice guy, Janusz from Poland, who's also a psychology major in college. Or you'd love my roommate Giacomo. He's an actor from Milan with Imagine Dragons lyrics tattooed on his abs. And I also let them know that any guy they bring home who'd done the Camino would pretty much automatically win Dad's approval. But I digress. So often the younger people I've found myself with on the Camino, though, have not been American. And we see this in our own chapter at national events. We're not reaching a whole generation that could benefit so much from the Camino. And we recognize, too, that we're lacking in diversity in other ways. I want to thank everybody who participated in our focus group earlier this year to discuss how we can expand the appeal of American pilgrims, the Camino, and pilgrimage in general. One of the steps we've taken has been to bring on a digital marketing and communications intern from Kansas State University. Her name is Grace, and she's helping us with a strategy to improve our messaging and communications channels so that we might better reach a broader audience. Now, rounding out our vision statement, we inspire all who seek the spirit of the Camino to connect with the global community of pilgrims. So at the beginning of my remarks, I asked you to remember the feeling you had when you walked or biked the Camino. For me, one of the strongest feelings was joy. The joy I had in meeting pilgrims from all around the world. My daughter and I estimate that we met pilgrims from over 40 countries, at least 25 American states, and most of the Canadian provinces. And I'll never forget an experience I had on my second Camino. I was walking with a middle-aged woman from the Czech Republic and a Polish pilgrim in his early 20s. Now, when I was younger, I worked and studied in lived and studied in Cold War Eastern Europe. So I remarked to my companions, isn't it amazing that just over 30 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do this? And the Polish kid looked confused. And he looked at us, he said, why? And my new Czech friend and I almost fell over. The young guy had no conception of life behind the Iron Curtain. He was just a European making a European pilgrimage, as natural as anything. As you're approaching the cathedral in Santiago, you might recall there's an engraving in paving stones in multiple languages, which reads, "Europe was made on the Pilgrim Road to Compostela." And today that Pilgrim Road carries more than just Europeans. It brings peregrinos and peregrinas from all corners of the globe. Look at our event today. We welcome pilgrims from Ireland, the UK, and Australia, and a number of expats living in Santiago and New Zealand. These guests are all a part of the American Pilgrims family and the global pilgrim community. And we take these connections very seriously and these relationships very seriously. That's why the board makes a point of meeting via Zoom with our counterparts from other associations every couple of months, and why we send delegations to international meetings like the Encuentro Mundial that George Skriniar talked about. And it's also why we're cooperating with other national associations on several major joint projects in Madrid and Portugal. Yes, Europe was made on the Pilgrim Road to Compostela, but the optimist in me likes to think that the world just might be saved on that very road. So before I conclude, I want to say a few words about leadership changes at American Pilgrims on the Camino. For me, it's such a great honor to be asked to serve as the next chair of such a committed and talented board of directors, and to have the opportunity to work with so many of you in new and exciting ways. As a board, we're preparing to bid a fond farewell to 4 individuals who've gone above and beyond in service to the Camino and American Pilgrims. You heard from Dave Donsler this morning. As a 3-term chair, Dave steered our organization through the height of the COVID years, even as the Camino shut down and so much of our activity was paused or went virtual. He's chaired several annual gatherings, and he plans to continue in this capacity as co-chair of the 2024 gathering and our planned 2025 international gathering in Vancouver. Dave also led the nominations committee that identified our newest board members. Sarah Gradwell, who is here, I see you, Sarah. She's helping with our Zoom chat tonight, chaired the infamous 2020 Lake Tahoe gathering, which coincided with the start of the pandemic and a major blizzard. She has served as vice chair of American Pilgrims, chaired our technology and communications committees, and has agreed to continue on as our webmaster. Very important. Thank you. And we're looking forward to seeing Sarah at future gatherings, along with her tiara, her tutu, her banjo ukulele, and of course, the infamous shell bra. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you just got to get to know us a little better. Our current chair, Steve Lynch, who started us off this morning, has served in that role for the last 2 years, and before as treasurer and nominations committee chair of the organization. And during this time, he's represented us several times in Spain at gatherings of Camino associations from around the world. And he's readily rolled up his sleeves and served pilgrims on the ground as a Ribadiso volunteer. Steve's been a strong advocate for diversity of membership and for setting measurable organizational goals that help us to serve you better. For many members of American Pilgrims on the Camino, Jackie Saxon has been the face of the organization. As a member of the chapters committee, she has managed the application and interview process for countless chapter coordinators. And Jackie was also the chair of the 2023 annual gathering of pilgrims at Zephyr Point, where she was readily recognizable by her bright, colorful propeller beanie. Jackie's organizational skills and brilliant sense of humor are going to be dearly missed by all of us on the board. So even as we say goodbye to our valued colleagues, we welcome 4 newly appointed board members who bring a wide array of talents to the table as we pursue our mission. We welcome Erin Ashley Bailey from Boston, who will be co-chairing our communications committee. Rachel Ganzon from the Portland, Oregon area. I know she's a familiar face around American Pilgrims, and she'll be leading our chapters committee. Luis Gusoni from Houston, but I think I saw on the call, has been asked to coordinate our technology efforts. Martin Pena, who's also on the call with the big balloon background, which he designed. You saw his work this morning in the John Brierley tribute video, and he's going to co-lead our communications work with Erin, along with other duties as assigned for everybody and all of us, like any volunteer organization. So look for profiles of our incoming continuing board members on our website and in the next issue of La Concha. And I want to just remind you that, all of us walk in the footsteps of pilgrims who've gone before us, like American Pilgrims co-founder Sandy Lenthal, who died last week. Sandy walked 4 or 5 Caminos and organized the first gathering of pilgrims in Williamsburg, Virginia. And without her, we would not be here today. We've talked a lot about silence tonight, but I'd like to ask for just a brief moment of silence in gratitude and remembrance of Sandy. Thank you. So once again, I want to encourage you to get involved with American Pilgrims. Find your local chapter, join them on hikes and tertulias, attend our annual gathering and our national online events. If you become a member, you can submit a reflection or piece of artwork to La Concha, train to become an hospitalero, apply to be a volunteer with our Ribadisa Welcome Service, or participate in special cultural exchanges with our Spanish partners. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday to be with us today and this evening. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Many of you, I hope, in Texas. Season's greetings and buen camino. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Joe. I'm really looking forward to, as I think so many of our members of the American Pilgrims are looking forward to the future of our nonprofit group that have the 4 pillars, the pillars of simplicity, service, community, and gratitude. So much gratitude to you, Joe, for taking on the responsibility of leadership. Great thank you to Steve, who has just served 6 years. Dave, again, just served 6 years. Sarah, she's been our real key with just keeping us going, and Jackie to give us the inspiration. And each of you who continue, as Dave said, with the love of pilgrims. Without all of you joining us tonight, we could feel the love. And we hope to feel the love as we continue on our journeys and our pilgrimages together in one community to help inspire the entire globe to Camino pilgrimage. So, buen camino, and Joe, how do you say good evening in Spanish? Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
And muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias a todo. Yeah.
Until next time. Did you want to sing Ultrea, Joe? No.
If I weren't recovering from pneumonia, I'd go for it. But
Thank you, Joe.
See you in Texas.
And we'll see you all in Texas. Good night and Happy New Year. Happy holidays. Buen camino.